Hey everybody, welcome to week 7. I'm sorry it's been a while since I've done one of these videos for you. Last week was a little hectic, so thank you for filling out the poll asking what your schedule is like so that Shauna can potentially meet with you all at a time that most people can show up. So you can actually talk with her face-to-face, screen-to-screen about your assignments and get a little more out of this class that way. Again, that's not actually like required, but she wants to help you out based on the feedback that you provided during the midterm feedback. So thank you all for doing that. Hopefully she'll get back to you all about that and when she is going to host those meetings. But anyway, I went through your current events analysis. I was super impressed with all the things you chose to write about. It sounds like so many of you are very passionate about what's happening in the world, especially when it comes to people who are queer, people who are trans. And so thank you for being so thoughtful about that. And I'm sorry I didn't provide a lot of help with you prior to that, but I do hope to help you more today with your term paper that is going to be due. So I kind of want to talk about that a little more, talk a little bit about the topics that you can choose for your term paper. So I'm going to share my screen here and go through what's required for the term paper. I just want to let you know, I don't want to freak you out, but so the term paper is going to be, the rough draft is due May 29th. That is a Monday at 11:59. So that is in a couple weeks. Since it is coming up, I want you to start thinking about a topic that you want to pick for the term paper. So this paper is pretty similar if you've taken a sync class before to other papers that are usually required in these classes. So it's a more critical thinking and analysis paper. You're going to basically have a thesis where you have an argument. So that's what a thesis is, making an argument, taking a stance on something, applying some lens to an idea, and you're going to support it with evidence. So your evidence being materials that you've learned in class or papers that you can find, articles you can find on the library website. Shauna doesn't want you to use opinion articles or online articles like newspapers essentially. You want to use more primary sources that are peer-reviewed sources to help you support your evidence. But again, you can use the papers that you have read in this class, and you've already read them, so that's kind of nice and helpful. But you will turn in a 1,000 to 1,500 word written analysis plus a bibliography in MLA format, documenting any resources you consulted. Again, don't use online articles or opinion pieces for this assignment. This paper is designed to demonstrate your own ability to apply the concepts from this class to a critical analysis paper. So all the things that you've been learning up to this point, whether it was the terminology that we learned in the beginning, whether it's about queer resistance, which we're learning this week, decolonizing gender and sexuality. It could be about intersectionality and Black feminism. So those sorts of things that you're basically going to demonstrate that you understand the concepts that you learned from that. Not all of them, not all the concepts, but you're going to focus on certain concepts that we're learning in this class. So you're going to choose readings and concepts from this course and apply lenses of gender and sexuality studies to either a media, text, or a cultural event or topic of your choice. You must cite any sources referenced. So some examples that Shauna provides for ideas to write your paper is you can analyze the portrayals of Gen Z sexuality on the TV show Euphoria. You can analyze the media treatment of Simone Biles as a Black woman who has experienced sexual assault. You could analyze the pregnancy complications of Serena Williams through the lens of reproductive health issues for Black women. You can look at the struggles of Caster Semenya to compete in the Olympics as an intersex person, et cetera, et cetera. So Shauna's providing you a lot of examples that don't necessarily have queerness as a part of them. So your paper doesn't actually have to have anything related to queerness. In the case of like Serena Williams and reproductive health for Black women, but it does have to do with gender and sexualities in some shape or form. And to be honest, like most things seem to relate to gender and sexuality somehow in some shape or form. So Shauna asks that you must have an original argument or opinion supported by evidence. So not only are you making a statement like, this is my argument, this is what I am saying about this event or this topic or this movie or piece of media, but you also want to take the papers that you have read in this class or papers that you found online through the PDX library and use that as evidence and back up what you're saying with evidence with that evidence. So you cannot argue that the text you have chosen is representation and representation is good or bad, or that representation is a good thing in and of itself without further explanation. So I believe what Shauna means when she is saying this is if, for instance, you choose to talk about representation in like a movie. So take Fire Island, for example. That was a movie that came out, I believe it was last summer. It has Bowen Yang in it, who's on SNL, and he's just so great. But anyway, it's primarily about these gay Asian American men who go on this amazing trip together that they've been doing for years, but it might be their last time going. And so it's about this whole experience and their lived experiences and struggles and joy as gay Asian American men. So there's like a lot of intersectionality in that. And obviously representation that is not common in media and among movies throughout history. There just isn't a lot of that. And so if you want to write a paper about like representation in a movie of some identity or intersectional identities, you don't want to just state in your paper like, this is good. You want to like say, okay, this, you may say like it is a positive thing for this community, or it impacts this community in a positive way, or it helps people who don't have those lived experiences to understand what it's like to be a gay Asian American man in the US. You wanna provide evidence as to like how is this representation impacting or benefiting these communities, and you want to provide evidence. You could maybe, for that example, for the Fire Island example, you could go to the intersectional week where we talked about like Black feminism. That would be a great example, just because it talks so much about intersectionality, and so you could try to argue that this representation helps reduce violence in the American among Americans for this particular group of people, because, and you could like say whatever you believe there, but whatever you're arguing, you want to make sure you back it up with evidence. So also, Shauna says in the next sentence, you cannot pick a text from the past and just argue that it doesn't meet today's criteria and definitions of social justice. You must be more nuanced and context specific than that. So you can make arguments about a piece of media, a text, or something from the past, and talk about how, um, like, if this came out today, people would be very angry, because, oh, it's incredibly homophobic or fat phobic, um, or it makes fun of trans people, or it's very harmful to women, and but you want to be nuanced and like in why you believe that something that maybe a piece of media from the past wouldn't hold up in by today's standards. So one example, actually, another movie. I know I'm referencing a lot of movies and media. I love watching them, so I reference them. So there's this movie called The Birdcage, and it stars Robin Williams, um and it's from 1996, I believe, and it's about these two men who are married to each other, and they run a club that is a drag club, and they're very like flamboyant and extravagant, um and they have a son though who is trying to marry a woman whose parents are these extremely conservative people, that uphold conservative heteronormative standards. So you might say like, hey, this movie actually, you might believe this movie doesn't actually portray gay people in a way that would hold up today. Um, in For whatever reason, it could be because like, well, Robin Williams was playing a gay man when he is not a gay man. Like that wouldn't hold up today, but you want to like say why wouldn't that hold up today? um why wouldn't it meet today's criteria and definitions of social justice? And so when you are arguing that, you want to go back to the weeks. Like, I recommend after you pick your topic, go week by week in this class and figure out which week really addresses the topic that I'm interested in, and which papers should I go back to that might support what I'm arguing in this paper. So Shauna does want you to reference key terms, concepts, and frameworks from our course readings and materials. So, you know, use words that we've learned throughout this term, ideas like Black feminism or queer theory, and you know, talk about it. Like, you can talk about like what it is, and then you can cite the source in which you learned about it from this class. I'm actually going to stop sharing this now because I've just read all of it. But anyway, if you're having trouble finding a topic for this term paper, first and foremost, pick one that is interesting to you, that you feel excited about, that it's something that you feel like you could talk about forever with your friends. And again, it doesn't have to be like about gender per se or sexuality per se. Like, it doesn't have to be about both those things. It can be about one. It could be about an event that is related. There's a lot happening in the world right now. There's so many examples to pull from, as you can see with the current event analysis that you did. And if you're still having trouble figuring out a topic, go look at your peers' ideas, like with their current event analysis. Actually, that's a great place to start, because so many people were talking about things I didn't even know about, like abortion in Poland. Like, whoa, that's wild. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot going on with education for children, banning children from having access to trans and gender affirming care. I mean, I'm sure you're all aware of these things. The drag bans is a big thing. Drag shows are are being banned from states like Tennessee. Don't say gay bills are popping up. I think someone actually talked about in their current analysis about Zoe Zephyr and how she, a trans woman in Montana, was barred from the Montana legislature because she was standing up for trans youth and trans rights in Montana. And they argued that she was threatening them. Anyway, these are events that you could pull from, but you could also do historic events too. And you could take like a critical analysis of maybe like the AIDS epidemic that happened in the 80s, primarily in San Francisco. And you could maybe talk about like how that's viewed today, and maybe how there's so much more medicine now, like PrEP medicine, that people can take to avoid getting AIDS, contracting AIDS, or HIV, pardon me, contracting HIV, which can lead to AIDS. And you can talk about how maybe like the public idea of AIDS and HIV has changed up to this point, or maybe it hasn't. Like you could argue the other way around too. Also, another thing, speaking of that, just recently, I think it was the CDC is now allowing gay and bisexual men to donate blood. That has been a huge issue because there's this stigmatization around gay and bisexual men not being able to donate blood because of the risk that they might have HIV in their blood. But obviously that's silly because straight people can get it too. But anyway, that's something you could talk about. You can talk about media. Actually, if you're on Instagram and you're having trouble coming up with ideas, I highly recommend following the page Them. So it's just at Them. And they are an amazing queer page that does news surrounding queer news, media, and the like. And they have really great articles. They have amazing writers. So if you're like, oh, I don't know what to pick, like everything sounds interesting, or I have no idea, that's a great place to start. Even going week by week of what we've learned and figuring out which week you felt the most excited and like you felt like you were getting a lot from. Maybe you're really interested in decolonizing gender and sexuality, and maybe you want to talk more about that. I mean, there's so many things. And so what I would like you to do this week for your peer mentor participation points is post in the discussion an idea that you have of what you would like to write about. So we're just brainstorming topics right now. We're not even jumping into arguments yet. Although if you have an idea, a lens, or a angle that you want to come at your topic with already, that's awesome. Like, so a great idea too when you are trying to come up with the argument for your topic is like coming up with a research question, essentially, like and then your thesis, your argument that you're making in your paper is the answer to that research question. So yeah, for this week, please just post. It can be one sentence long about the topic that you're interested in, but you can explain more. You could talk about why you're interested in it. You could talk about what argument you want to make, what evidence you want to use. I mean, you can be as thorough as you want with this because this is just supposed to help you in your writing. But again, I don't want to add too much more work than what you already have to do. So if you only have time for one sentence, that is great. So I'm glad you're here. I appreciate you all. I hope you have a great week. Stay cool. These 90 degrees days are already really killing me, but we'll get through it, right? But bye, friends.